Hello, and thank you for joining us today. It is the end of the year. Everyone is busy with the last push before their holidays. So we do really appreciate you guys all taking the time to join us. So 2023 has been an epic year for Coordinates, with many new releases, including our totally new user interface, desktop app. We've had a couple of plugins released as well. And this year, we've shown you all these various parts of Coordinates through our webinar series. We wanted to take time tonight to show you how they all fit together to make an off-the-shelf geospatial platform. So to introduce our team, first of all, I am Anne Harper. I'm the Chief of Staff here at Coordinates. We have Eli Chadwick here. Eli is our sales engineer and will lead us on a tour through the Coordinates ecosystem. We also have Jonathan Ball, our product manager, is online, and he is able to answer any questions that you might have. So please don't hold back. If you have a look down the bottom of your screen, you'll see that there's a Q&A. So if you chuck your questions in there, then we'll be online to work through those. And if you have time to stick around at the end of all this, we'll go through a couple of them. Also, we will record and send out this clip next week. So if you have to leave for whatever reason, or if someone you know wants to watch it after you have, because you think it was amazing, you can share that around. Cool. Well, on that note, I will hand over to Eli to kick off this tour.
Cool. Thank you, Anne. Welcome to everybody. I'll just move a few things around. Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your location around the world. I believe we've got a pretty diverse range of countries dialing in today, so that's always cool. I'm going to take you on a tour of the Coordinates platform. This is really tying together a number of different webinars that we've done over the year. And the idea here is just to give you an idea of what it looks like to consume data off a Coordinates site, what it looks like to load data onto a Coordinates site, and the various mechanisms that we have for delivering data to your users. So I'll just start with a couple of slides, assuming no one knows anything, just give you a quick overview of the Coordinates platform. Our parent website is called Koordinates.com. The way that it works is it's a multi-tenanted environment. We've got a number of different publishers, we call them. To be a publisher, you have a site with us. When you get a site, you get a white labeled data portal. You can have a custom URL, custom branding, and you basically control the content and the accessibility to the layers that you publish. So the idea really is you get an off-the-shelf geospatial platform. We've done all of the sort of background work for you. All you need to do is load your data up, determine who you want to be able to see it, invite them to your site, and you're away. There's a number of different methods for ingestion of data onto the site. There's also a number of different methods of getting data off the site. So there's a number of different use cases that get satisfied through one of our white label data portals. Over on the left, we've got a subsection of our publishers. What they have in common is the need to get their data onto the internet, into the hands of their users. So they're a mixture of completely open data through to completely closed data or shared only with named users. So you can have your site be private to the world on the internet, or you can have it be operating locally within your own domain or network. It really depends on, or you can have a combination of the two. So it really depends on what your use case is. And the structure of what we're going to do today, I want to spend a bit of time looking at what it looks like to pull data off a Coordinates platform. I'll do that on Koordinates.com. And then I'll grab a data set off there and load it onto a private site, just to give you an idea of what that process looks like. And then once I've got that loaded up, we'll look at consuming it in a few of the different components that we've built that combine to create what we call the Coordinates ecosystem. Just a bit of background before we get into the live stuff. What the Coordinates ecosystem is designed to do is break out data silos. We know that people have a bunch of data sitting around on file servers, and they often have to go through quite an arduous process to distribute version control. Version controlling often just means backup with a date stamp, with its inherent issues with rolling back, multi-users collaborating on a data set. Even finding it in the first place can be problematic. So the idea is bust all your data out of its silos, get it onto a coordinate site, and make it really easy for the end users, whatever it is that they're up to consume data off your site. So you could think of it as like a sort of a SharePoint geospatial operation whereby you can share all your data in a controlled fashion with users through different mechanisms, which I will go through. A number of these so-called mechanisms are going to use what we call CART under the hood. Just a brief explanation of what CART is and a caveat: you do not need to understand what CART is. This is more just sort of filling in the gap so you have an idea of how the system operates. CART is a wrapper around Git. Git's proven version control system used across the world in web development or software development. And what it essentially enables is having your data stored in one area, pulling the data down, but still connected to the hosted data. So when the hosted data gets updated, you can easily update the data that you've pulled down. And it allows people to say, you might have an Esri system, they can make edits on a data set, push it back up to the parent repository, and then you could have a QGIS user or any other ecosystem, and it allows everyone to collaborate on the same data set without having to make different copies of the data, different versions of the data. It just makes it a whole lot easier to manage your workflows there. So we'll jump into a live site just to give you an idea how it works. This is Koordinates.com. I mentioned earlier it's a multi-tenanted environment. Any of the publishers that we have that have their own sites that have made their data public will be available through Koordinates.com. Obviously, private data can't be seen through here. You can see a bunch of our publishers over here, so you can actually dive from here straight into the data that's been made available through these different publishers. Couple of things up the top here first. If I go into, you have a data button and a map button, fairly self-explanatory. Map turns the map on and off. Data turns the data browser on and off. Depends what part of your journey you're on. You might want to maximize screen space and like have no map, so you can go looking for some data. To do the searching for the data, so one of the sort of first big things and the most obvious thing is, how do I find the data set that I want? When we get to the section about creating a site for your organization, searching for data gets a wee bit different because you might have the data all affiliated with different groups, and so they will just by nature of the system, or when they dial in, they will see, or log in, they will see their data sets available that you've made available to their user. We do have, so you'll get exactly the same functionality of this in a site. This is just the big parent site. There's a number of different things you can do down the left here. We call these filters. You can filter by region. So say you're looking for some data in Australia, in Europe, you can filter all the data sets by this. What we're doing under the hood is geotagging every data set that gets loaded up. So we have an idea about where it's from. Just makes sense to look for data in your area for a project that you might be kicking off. Under publishers, I already touched on that, but that just shows you all of the different publishers that have open data on our platform or in our ecosystem. Date, license, and access, these are all just when was the last data updated, when was the data last updated, what is the license affiliation, so you can filter by license type and different access mechanisms. The most interesting thing, I think, in order to explain the way it all works is this data type. So you can filter here by vector data, and that's going to only allow you to see points, lines, and polygons. You can also filter by raster. The main reason I'm showing you this is just to give you an idea of some of the different data formats that we support, and also grids. Point clouds are soon to be released as well, so they will become another entry in this data type. Drop down, and then these other guys down here are kind of interesting. There's tables. So you might have data that you want to share with your users that is a tabular without a geometry in it. So you can do that from in here. You can then view the data set in a table viewer, and there's a few things you can do in here. Most notably, you can export it, you can search it, number of different things you can do. I'll close that down for now, get my map back. And then sets, that's where you might want to combine a bunch of data sets together into one sort of logical unit of data set. It allows people to download a number of different layers in one shot. Repositories, this is the cart thing. I won't go into that too much today. And documents, so you can share like PDFs, docs, things like that. So it's not just geospatial stuff. You can upload any data that you want to share with your users, whatever that might mean in terms of, internal users, external users. It's really just a data distribution system for predominantly geospatial, but we can accommodate all different data types. What I'm going to do first of all is clear out my tables filter. I'm going to grab some data that I want to load into my private site. And I happen to know that I can find it from here. So the good old keyword search, I'm going to look for some building data. I want building footprints for my town that I live in. And I have found New Zealand building outlines. This is good news. That's what I'm after. So when you click on that, it opens up what we call a data sheet. All of the information you're seeing in here is configured by the publisher. You get metrics around the popularity of the layer. You get some about information, so descriptive things. You can free text in here, whatever you like. You can put links to other things. You can assign a license. We support Creative Commons out of the box, or you can create custom license if you need some sort of custom licensing around the data set that you're distributing. Tags, you can configure tags, helps with searchability. We support ISO 19115 and Dublin Core metadata, which can both be downloaded from here or viewed on site. Details about the layer, what type is it, what's its layer ID. When you start interacting with things programmatically, you're going to need the layer ID, so you can come in here and grab a copy of it, and you'll be plugging that into various different calls like WFS or API calls. Feature count, how many features are there? And then some history and version control with a small data sample, just to give you an idea of what attributes are in there. So the main idea here is we want to give the users as much information about the data set so they can do an appraisal of it, work out whether it's fit for purpose, and don't go downloading enormous data sets and then realizing, oh, that's not the one I was after. So if you've gotten through all of this, a few other tabs here, I won't go into them today, but it's the repository shows you, and the history both show you different versions of the data as they've been uploaded. So if a layer has been frequently updated, which this one will have been, there's going to be a number of different entries. So every time this layer got updated, we generate what we call a change set. These are accessible through WFS, a web feature service. These repositories are cart repositories, so a wrapper around Git. We think this is the direction that things are going to head for a number of reasons, which should become relatively obvious later. But suffice to say, each time there's an update, that gets loaded up as a commit, and each commit you can roll back using this GUID once you've cloned the data down. And then under services and APIs, this gives the user a clue about the different things they can do to interact with the layer. So WFS, I just mentioned the change sets. You can have a layer published on coordinates that you hit by spatial query. So some people will build an application and they'll basically send requests at that layer and get back point with them polygon information, things like that. Cart is the wrapper around Git, and this is where you can get information about how you go about pulling that data layer down. So a couple of different ways of authenticating, and then you're going to clone the layer down. In any case, what I want to do right now is add this layer to my map. And jump out of here. I can do things like, if I clear that out, I could add other layers. So I could add a parcel layer, I could add property data, any number of layers. I could even add an elevation model. So it's possible to build up a map with all of the data sets that you want. And then once you're happy with that, we can go into a map only view. So this we call a map viewer. From here, you can do a few things. I can save the map viewer. It'll be saved against my user. If I was to log out and log back in, I'd have a list of all of my viewers under this menu, and I can regenerate them at any time, and they store whatever extent you were looking at. So if I zoom into the area that I'm interested in, you can do things like adjust the order of the draw. You can turn layers on and off. You can do transparencies. What I'm interested in is my hometown here, where I'm going to build up a data set around this area and then show you different ways of interacting with it. If I was to want to do an export, I think you'd see right here that this is going to be rather a large export, too large for this conversation. What I'll do is I will deselect, jump out of here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to lose a couple of layers, like the big ones. So now I'm looking at just building outlines for Rotorua. For me to do an export, we default a crop to the viewport of the map viewer. You can get rid of that and say, no, I just want the whole data set. Up the top here, we set your projection or CRS. We, by default, will put the data out in the projection that it was published in, but recognize that you might want to reproject it to a different projection. This just allows users not to have to go through an extra step once they've downloaded the data. I'll just leave it in the default. That's good for me. This is a vector layer. There's a number of different formats that I can output this data in. So we've got Esri shape, Esri file geodatabases. You can grab it as map info. That's a CSV, so it will fit into most GISs. Geo packages are also highly flexible and go into most different ecosystems. And then we've got KML, Google Earth, DWG for CAD, or a PDF. So a number of different ways of getting the data out. I'm going to take a geo package. The other thing, I'm just going to download it. So if I go create export, that's going to pop in the background. It's going to start building me a zip file. And once that link is completed, I can hit download. I'm not going to wait for that because I had prepared something earlier in the name of progress. So if I'll just show you what I would have got had I waited. The other thing I'd done earlier is I had cropped it down to my territorial authority. So I've only pulled out the area that I'm interested in. So I've got that data set down here inside the zip file. I have a geo package. I've got some about information, and I've also got some XML. That was because it was published with XML, so that's going to be some metadata. So that's a pretty quick fly through. There's a bunch of other stuff. Just wanted to give you a sort of a feeling for what it's like as an end user searching for data. Bearing in mind that was a public site with a ton of data in it. So when you build your site out, you're probably more likely to have less volume of data in there. You'd have a different view. So this is a demo site. Gives you an idea of how you can, I've made it this incredible orange color. You can load your own logos in. You can have a bunch of links here that you can configure. Most importantly, when I get into I have this manage button. That means I'm a paid seat. I've got the ability to push data up to this site. Most users that aren't administrators will simply have the data in the map, much the same as I was looking at on the last site. So when I click the manage and I remove my map, this has taken me into the data management area of Koordinates. So there's a few things in here that you can do. I'll just breeze through them. There's a whole lot of things you can do in here actually, but I just, again, wanted to give you a sort of a heads up on what it would look like if you wanted to load some data into your site, just so you can have an idea of what that might mean for your organization. First thing to look at, users and groups. So the way that we do our access control is when you have a site, your users will come along, they will join the site, so register with the site, they then become a user in the system. From there, I can create a number of different groups. So there you're just going to go create group, make a group. My town is Rotorua, already made a group. I've actually loaded some layers against it and have some users already. But it's fairly simple, create group, let's just call it demo group. I won't go into all of the different features here today, but just to keep it simple, I've made a new group, and from there I can go add users. You've got your user base all registered with the site. You can also invite users, so you can send out an invite to all of, or we can do single sign-on through Azure AD or Okta. So there's a few options there, but you're going to build up your group, you're going to add your users to it. Once you've done that, that's probably one of the larger admin overheads at the beginning of a setup, aside from loading up your various graphics and so forth. The next step is to get some data into the site. I'll just cover off this first. We've got this concept of data sources. What it essentially means is you can connect your coordinate site to a number of these different buckets. You might keep your data in an Amazon S3 bucket. So we can set up if I was to connect to this, I'd set up a CloudFormation template, which would connect the site to your S3 bucket. You then do a scan of that bucket. And then from over here under data sources, you will go look at that data source, find the layers that are in there. So it'll identify a number of different data sets that are available for ingestion, select that layer and pull it into the site. That also goes for ArcGIS REST endpoints. So that's thinking things like enterprise, online, portal, the old server, any of the Arc formats that put out REST endpoints. And we can do a scrape of that. So if you've got either a supplier of data that publishes a Arc Enterprise or something like that, you can easily grab data off their site without having to pull it down to your machine and then push it back up. This is a data gateway into your environment, a Postgres database that's internet enabled, or a web feature service. So those are the ones that we currently support. Over time, we will build this out to support other things. That's where we're at right now. One of the things to mention about this is if you're pulling in enormous raster layers, for instance, we propose the best practice is really to put it into an S3 first and pull it across. The reason we say that is because we are in S3. So it's a really fast ingestion. It's basically S3 to S3, quicker than going from your hard drive up to our site, because if you've got up and down internet, that could cause problems with an upload. In any case, once you've actually got the data into our environment, it's the same process for all of these different things. And so to show you how that works, I'm going to just do a good old upload. I'm going to grab the data set that I had just pulled down earlier. So it's just a zip file sitting on my desktop, and it's got a geo package in it. Owning group, I'm going to assign it to this Rotorua group. So it's I guess what we're doing here is I am going to build out a series of data sets. I'm going to make them available to any people that are in the Rotorua group. When those people come to my site and open it up, that will be the data that they see. They will also see any other data that you've just made generally available. But the idea here is, say you've got some contractors, you want them to see these data sets and you only want them to see it. This is how you'd go about doing that. So we're not talking open data here. We're talking about a data portal within your organization that you can let people see. They don't have to be on your domain. They can be externals. So you really get to pick and choose how you distribute your data. You might have noticed it said scanning. We'll do a scan of the incoming data set. If we find any data that's not OGC compliant, we will reject the import, and you'll get an email saying this was there was a problem here, and then we can help you resolve that, whatever the problem was. Now that I've got it uploaded, I can drill down into the zip file, drill into the geo package, find this New Zealand building outlines, to vector layer, been selected, great, do import. So I was talking about a bunch of data sources earlier. Once you've done your upload, or if you'd gone through one of those other data sources, once you get to here, it's the same process from here on in. So what happened to get you here differs, but once you're here, it's the same for everybody. So this is by default going to be locked to any metadata. I can make it a custom title, so we'll just call that a demo. There's a number of different things I can set. So this description has been pulled from the XML metadata. Again, I can set it to custom. If I wanted to, I'll just leave it at locked to metadata, because it's probably all good information. If I go down a little, these attachments are quite interesting. What this is when the user comes to the data set and wants to download it, the attachment might be like a data dictionary, a PDF, a doc, spreadsheets, different things, and they attach to that layer. So when the user downloads it, they will get these attachments as well. So if you have any additional information that you want to circulate or other things, this is how you would do that. A couple of ways of doing that. You can either upload them or you may have already uploaded them. So you just browse to that item and attach it to this layer. Tags, this is where you set your tags. Owning group, I'm setting it to this Rotorua group. Categories, you can set up a number of different categories and assign it to those categories. License, I'll just go for the Creative Commons. I can toggle these radio buttons to whatever my business requirements are for licensing. Primary key, if it's a layer that you're going to update a lot, you would want to set your primary key. So in this case, it would be the building ID. The reason you will do this is when you come along and do an update to that layer, what we will do is scan the incoming data and use the primary key to work out whether it's an insert, an update, or a delete, and we'll generate a change set and update the underlying data. So you have to have designated a primary key for that to work. Elevation, that's just an attribute that contains elevation data. Encoding stuff, a summary of what you're about to do here, just so you know. You might at this point decide to swap it, change it to a table rather than a layer if you want to drop the geographies, up to you. And you're going to hit import. And that kicks off the import process. You don't have to hang around here for import, so you can go off and do other things. So that'll just sit there and import. And once it's done, whatever your settings were will determine how that data is viewed externally. I'll just open up a layer that I had already imported. So you have a thumbnail showing the extents of the geographies, and then all of the same information that I was just covering off there. So at any time you can come in here, make changes and hit publish, and that will just enact the changes to the configuration that you've just made. A couple of tabs up here that are interesting. Access is quite a crucial one. So under access, if you want the layer to be publicly consumable, you would come in here, hit this ellipsis and select the level of distribution that you wanted. So if I was to set it to this bottom option, that means it's a public data set, publicly discoverable. Google will know about it. If you don't want that, you can say, I don't want any public access. This is only for my internal stakeholders. So again, depends what your requirements are. And then the other interesting bit down here is group access. So I assigned this group as the owning group. You can assign a number of different groups to any layer that you've published. So you might have a master set and you want various different groups to be able to see it. You can have, 1 to n number of groups accessing that data set. At any given time, you can come along in here, change the accessibility of the layer and then hit apply, and that gets applied to the underlying data set. The other bit that's kind of crucial is map services. This is the generation of tile services. We have an automatic cartography, which is going to be blue, or if you just keep adding layers to a map viewer, it's just going to cycle around a color palette. If you want to control what the styling is for the layer, you can come in here, hit a new map style, go into we use Carto CSS, so you can go in there and change the way that it's being presented. And then that unlocks the ability to do certain things, like if you've created a tile set, you can access it by WMTS XYZ services, which I'll do shortly. But so for this layer, I've created a blue and published it. So those are the main things I wanted to go in from a publishing perspective. Fairly simple. Set up your accessibility, get your data from somewhere onto the site. Worth mentioning that we do not federate data, we cache it. So we're always going to pull a copy of it onto our back end. We are based in AWS, and it's really important that the data sits really close to the web server so that it cuts down latency in map viewers and makes downloading possible. Really, if we were trying to access it in situ, that would get a bit more slow. So that's the logic there. If I go back into the front end, I'll just give you an idea about what this might look like from an end user perspective. We've got this group. So I'm an admin, I can see everything. But just to give you an idea of what it would look like for a user that you'd put into a group, I can say, let's just look at the data that's been loaded for Rotorua. So now I have just the layers that I've loaded. We can see that the building outlines layer has now come through. And interestingly, under services and APIs, you can hit this by WFS or cart. That's because I hadn't put a style on that data set. I have one that I had loaded previously, which is up here. So if I open up this data sheet, and go into the services and APIs, you can see that now, because I've created a style that enables interaction by WMTS or XYZ tile service, which is going to be desirable for a lot of users. Obviously, you can always hit it by WFS, so various OGC options there. So what I wanted to show you next is I am a Rotorua contractor that needs a bunch of data out of your organization. I can come in here and go, oh, great, there's all the layers I want. Let's add them to the map. I can add in some parcel information. I can add in some roading information. The old building outlines go in, and the address points. And I'm also going to add this raster layer. So if I zoom in here, we get an idea of the view that I have. So I'll close out of data viewer. This is now a map view. It's got all of the layers that I need. That's obviously up to the publisher and the end users. They might say, hey, can you give me a layer for this? All you have to do is add it to your site, and this will now come into their view. I can save this as, I'll call it Rotorua, and save. So now under my viewers, I've got this map. I could go away, do other things. This will always be here. I can also fire off another map viewer, load more data into it. And in this tab bar across the bottom here, it stores all of my maps, which you can turn off. I'm happy, I'll leave it on. So from here, I've got, we're looking at this concept through our map viewer, which we refer to as GIS Lite. And the idea is not all users want to be able to download the data. They're not maybe proficient with different GIS desktop tools. They do have a need to just basically know what's in there. And a lot of people will struggle with, what do I do with this file? What can I view it in? And so with this interface, there's a number of things they can do. They can do a spatial query and get ideas around what's in that data set. I believe this version, yep, I can dock it. And so you can now scoot around the map looking at different features, and you've got all the information down here around what it is. If the publisher was to update the underlying data, you will always be looking at the latest version of the data through here. We're going to be building out this functionality quite a lot. There's something coming pretty soon called shareable map viewers, which will allow you to configure a map viewer and then share it through your site. So the user will be able to come into your site. It'll be another data type under data. They can select the map viewer, and that will just basically pre-can everything that you wanted them to be able to see. And there's a bunch of functionality coming around that. And then again, if you were actually wanting to download the data, say you had bigger requirements than just viewing it in here, there's a couple of things that I would point out first. So under this, any of these layers, I can toggle the visibility. I can say, let's show me a bit less of that one. I can zoom to the layer. I can hit info, which will open up the data card. So maybe I want to know something about that data set. I can also say, show me the data table. Now I've got a view of the entire data save table, which is searchable, sortable. Again, GIS Lite, you might be able to do most of the things you need to do without ever pulling it out into your GIS system. Assuming you do need a copy of it, we go into the export flow, which I just covered off earlier. The only additional thing of interest in here really is that we've got a raster layer, so I can show you the different export formats. It's all the usual suspects, and these formats again will be growing over time. A couple of things up here, we notify you that there is a method for for interacting with these data sets via services. You might have got to this point thinking, oh, I wish I could just hit it by a service. Why do I have to download it all? That's going to be gargantuan. So come in here, look at the services. There's all the information, generate your API keys, and download it. I'm not going to bother downloading this one because the next couple of bits I want to go through are the wider ecosystem, and I'm going to show you some ways where your users will be able to interact with your data without ever having to download the data at all. So that's what it looks like to get data into the site. Next thing I wanted to cover off was the ecosystem, and we will start with the QGIS plugin. So this is QGIS. That's just an OpenStreetMap contextual map. This is the Coordinates plugin. What I wanted to show you in here is a few things. The idea here is I want to get the data into my project, and I may or may not need the actual data locally. So to achieve that, we can quite simply say, again, I can filter by the group. So only show me stuff. If I was logged in as a user that could only see that data, this is exactly what they would see. So there are the same layers. They've got a view of them all. It's exactly the same UI as the site. So I can open up any of these data cards and go in there and look at all the same information. I can even pull the metadata, number of things I can do from in here. The kind of beauty of the system is once you understand one of the components, you inherently understand all of the components. So for instance, you've got two options for this primary parcel layer. I can either do a get, which will be doing a cart clone, and a cart clone is where you're going to pull down the entire repository to your local system, or you're going to do an add. So first I'll go through and do some adds. When I do the add, what I'm doing is basically pulling down the entire data set. So I can go through these different layers and I could just say, right, what have we actually got here? I'm going to add that. I'm going to add that. This is hitting them by a service. So I can even add the raster layer, and I can add the address data. So without too much fuss, I've essentially generated the same workspace that I was just dealing with up in the cloud. Difference is I'm now on my desktop. But like the cloud, I don't actually have copies of the data, so I can't do edits. These are just going to be like a WNTS web service that's been added to your layer, but it's going to provide a bunch of context. As you'll all know, you often need a copy of the data. I'll pick a layer like perhaps this roads layer, so I'm going to lose that one. I'm going to find the layer, and now this time instead of doing an add, I'm going to do a get. And there's quite a big difference in what goes on here. When you do a get, I'm going to clone the layer. This means the data is coming down to my machine itself. And I'll call it roads. Select that. So now I'm telling it, I want the road data and I want it in that folder. It's going to come down as a geo package. With cart, you can set different types of working copies. We default to GeoPackage. You can actually have a PostGIS database, or you can have a SQL server, MySQL, number of different options. That again will be built out over time. I'll just leave it set to GeoPackage. Another thing I could do, I could set a spatial filter. This data has already been filtered, but imagine it was, say, a global data set. You don't need the whole lot. So this will restrict the view to just your viewport here and chop it out. You're still going to be connected to the hosted data, but you're only going to have to pull down a small amount. I will not do that because that was quite a small data set anyway. And if I hit OK, up here it's telling me, right, that data is cloning. And I'll show you what that means as soon as it gets down, which is generally pretty quick. It's not a very big data set, but even really, really large ones won't take that long to clone. So it's definitely more efficient than doing an export or a download. So that's pulled that data down. What we've done over here is when I installed the plugin, which by the way, all you have to do to install the plugin is go into manage and install plugins. And from there, you can just search for coordinates. You'll find the coordinates plugin. And you can go ahead and install that. It's gone across all the monitors. Let's get rid of it. Yeah, from there. So having downloaded it, there's a couple of things it's done. I've got, when you install the Coordinates plugin, you also get this cart repositories plugin. So this is the layer that I just installed. I can drag and drop that in from here, or it will have created a coordinates entry in your browser over here. Every time you clone anything, it will appear here, and I can simply drag and drop that, verify that it's the right information, and it goes. That's hard to see. Let's just make it red. That might help. So a bit better. So let's put this routing layer in. The big difference here is if I go into where I put it, which will be in here. So this is the folder that I just created. Inside of that folder is a geo package. So you've now got the data local. You could drag it off and do whatever you like with it. You can load it anywhere. That is simply whatever format you selected, you now have the data set sitting there. But there's a few added sort of bonuses around having cloned it, such as I can go show me the log. That's going to show me the history of the data set. So this data set actually has a very minimal history. But if you had one that you'd updated a lot over time, you'd get commits or save points of each time you'd done an edit. So the big difference here is having got this data locally, I can now do things like I'm going to undo some edits on it. So whereas obviously with a service, you can't do that. When you actually got the data, I can add a feature in, I could commit that feature, and I can actually push it back up to my site. So this is where you get that collaboration aspect going on. Number of things I could show you here, but that I think is enough for now. Main takeout is user comes along, they can see all the layers that have been made available to them. They can interact with them in different ways. They can view them contextually. They can pull them down and make edits to them. And they can actually push data back to the site if they have write access to the underlying data set. So the other part of the ecosystem is this is the Koordinates desktop app. It's freely downloadable off the site. So if you had a site, or if you don't, you can download this app, install it on your desktop. So this is maybe, say you were an Esri user, you needed to get data off the site. You would install this app, you would come along, you would find the layers you want. I'll grab the same layer. So let's get the roads layer again. And it's again the same UI. You can select where you're going to put it, do a get. That's cloning the layer down. This will be creating a directory in my coordinates folder. And then from there, I can open that and I could open it up in ArcMap here, make some edits, and then save those all. But that's a story for another day. I'll let that clone down for a sec just to prove that it does work, or maybe I won't. It did. So now I've got this is a review of the repository, and it'll show me all the edits that have been made to the data set. So if I was to make an edit to this data set, I would come in here, save that. I would get another commit point. I would get a diff map showing me what I had done with any attribution updates that I'd made. And I can also then push it off to a different site, or if I had access rights to data, I can just simply push my edits back up to the site. Again, conversation for another day, but just suffice to say that functionality exists. And the last thing that I want to show you was, if I go back into my demo site here, say I've got some data that I want to use in a third-party application. I can open up the data card. I can go into services and APIs. I can say, all right, not that one. I come down here to this XYZ tile service, having already created a API key. And then I've got this test harness that I use just for testing. I can add that in, but imagine this is just any old third-party website that's sitting there. And from there, I can add my services to it, configure the layer name, do whatever it is that I needed to do. But that's really just to give you an idea of another option that you have with pushing your data around the place. So you can build an application, store all your data up here, pipe it into your app, and you've got yourself a geospatial server of layers. I think probably that might be enough for now. So yeah, grab a site, put some stuff in it, consume it. I'll pass it back over to Anne now.
Great, thanks so much for that, Eli. We had some good questions come in as well. Jonathan, would you have a moment to cover off anything that you thought was, particularly interesting?
Yeah, a couple of great questions for sure. First one, you might be able to help me with, Eli. I've tried to answer it, but it was around how you can integrate FME with our products. I believe we've got an FME ingestion path, so a transformer that brings data into the portal. How would you work with FME to take data out? Would it be through any one of our APIs?
Yeah, there's a few different ways. So you can download the coordinates transformer from the FME hub. That's probably a pretty easy way to do it. That's going to basically drop a transformer on your workspace. You're just going to configure things like what's the URL to your site, what's your API key, and then you can do things like publish data, push data up there, upload data. So you could streamline your publishing pretty quickly like that. Another option would be you could use the cart system. So cart basically is you'd use the system caller transformer and essentially send cart commands into the cart executable on your desktop. Then you can do cool things like clone, commit stuff, push it straight back up. If I was going to do it, I would probably go down the cart path with FME because it just allows you to do all of the things without having to. Really, the publishing approach is old school. Cart has got way more functionality wrapped around it. So yeah, I'd go system caller, cart, push, pull, Git like operations.
Okay, cool. Another user's asked around for information around the spatial accuracy of our data. Now, I explained that we provide the software and normally a publisher uploads their data and that they're sort of responsible for the management and maintenance of that data. So the quality can vary a lot. But we have a lot of facilities for those publishers to be able to provide pretty thorough metadata, which there's often descriptions of the spatial accuracy and attribute accuracy of the data. Anything I should have added to that? Comes to mind?
Yeah, that covers it, I think.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's about all.
Oh, great. Well, yeah, thank everyone for your time today. If you are interested in coordinates and how it could work for your business, please do reach out to me on email or through our site. Otherwise, have a fabulous holiday season, and we will be running these webinars all through next year as well. So we hope to see you all back then. Yeah, have a good one.
Ooh.